All right, testing Twitch 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Testing Twitch 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Dude, I'm not even touching the desk. Fucking hate this. Maybe I just gotta like take it apart and redo it. I don't know. I think we sound fine.
All right, you ready to get started?
Dessert.
Hello and welcome to episode 181 of the Ego Chall Podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Justin Binkowski. And on today's episode, we are covering the CDL All-Star teams. We are making our picks for the two All-Star teams, and we are also selecting our awards for the 2025 CDL season, both legitimate and not legitimate, because some of these are definitely not CDL approved, but we're going to go through some of them. I hope this is going to be a pretty fun episode. But before we get to any of that, how you doing, Bink?
Doing all right. Looking forward to this. This should be a fun one. Like you said, I generally have a good time doing this. I think, you know, sort of like last year going into it, I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do, especially for the All-Star team. But maybe after we talk about it, it'll look a little different. So I'm excited to see what you think, and anybody watching or anybody in the comments after the show too. Leave your thoughts for your own personal awards for anything that we give, and maybe we'll be able to share some of the comments and whatnot on the next episode. If it's not while we're live now, it should be a good time though.
Yeah, of course. And if you want to go and look back at, well, I'll cover them as we go through this episode. But if you want to go back and look at our picks for some of these awards before the season began, you can go back to episode 135. So we are, almost 50 episodes past that. Yeah, so that was episode 135. That was in December. And we covered. We didn't cover All-Star team, but we did pick our MVP, Rookie of the Year, and most improved player / comeback player, first roster change, all that good stuff. So we'll go through it on this episode as well. But if you just wanted to kind of cite back, then you can do that episode 135. I think the best way to start would be with the All-Star teams, because All-Star voting is now completed. If you go to the Call of Duty League's website, you cannot cast your vote any longer. But the way that All-Star teams work in the CDL is that there are 2 spots for assault rifle players and 2 spots for SMG players on each of the 2 teams. So there's the first team comprised of 4 players, and then the second team comprised of 4 players as well. I think we'll almost certainly agree beat for beat for the first team. I don't think there's going to be any disagreement. So I think we should probably just get that out of the way, because there's probably not going to be a ton of drama with that one.
The way that it worked, especially in the past years when I was officially voting through the CDL, is that you just vote on 4 people that you think is an all-star for SMG, and then 4 people that you think is an all-star for AR, and then the first team and the second team are divided after that. So you're not actually voting, you're realistically just voting for 4 people you think are an all-star in each role, and then whoever gets the most votes. And it's not just that there's the fan vote, there's a media vote, there's a coach's vote, I think, and whatever. Whoever gets the most votes after that, the top 2 in each role is first team, third and fourth in each role is second team. So we're basically gonna guess what we think. I like Preston said, I think the first team's pretty straightforward. The second team is where I think it's gonna get a little interesting. But yeah, so you're not technically voting for first team, but it's probably the way it'll shake out.
Yeah, in this case, it definitely is. The first team that I picked, Scrap and Celium, Simp and Hydra. That's the 2 AR, 2 SMG split. I don't think there's going to be too much disagreement on that. Is there any case for any other player to replace one of these 4?
I don't think so, and I mean, you put in the notes here too that's literally the first team from last year, which I think is kind of crazy if it is like back-to-back years of the same exact top 2 ARs and top 2 SMGs. But when you really get down to it, like they are the 2 best ARs and the 2 best SMGs, so it makes a ton of sense that and they've been able to consistently do it. So I think it'd be pretty cool to have it in back-to-back years. I don't really think um, there's anyone that jumps off the page to me to replace them, especially given the, not for All Stars versus MVP. In my mind, I think All Stars you can be a little more lenient in voting for someone who might not have the championships to back up like the individual stats. I think, MVP, I think, at least in my personal opinion, that the championship plus the stats have to be there when we're looking at like number one MVP. All star, I think you look at like MLB all stars, they have to have some at least one representative from every team. That's not possible here since there's only 8 all stars, but I think you can be a little more lenient, but at the end of the day, like these two guys have been in each role really. The Scrap and Sell have been the two best ARs. They both have 2 tournament championships this year. They both have tournament MVPs. Then Simp and Hydra, they both have the championship. Simp has a tournament MVP. Hydra doesn't, just because Scrap has gotten it both. At both of LAT's wins, but I don't think anyone would let that sway them from not voting Hydra an All Star.
Yeah, and I think it should be noted that there are 2 LAT people on this first team. Each of these teams have 2 titles as well. Like you said, there is some kind of leniency or some kind of you can almost forgive a team's performance or a player's team results in the all-star teams, but it's also like these are probably the 4 best players in the world regardless of AR, SMG, and these are probably the top 4. We'll get there, but usually like going into a season, this is probably the top 4 for most people for MVP as well. Like if you were just to make a preseason MVP ballot, they're probably going to be among the at least top 5, if not top 4. The second team is where it gets interesting, and I had a really hard time at least finishing the second team. So I think, and interrupt me or call me out if I'm wrong. I think the ARs and like the 2 of these players are like pretty easy to pick. I would say Ghosty and Draza would be on the second team, and then the SMGs is where I get caught up. Do you think Ghosty and Draza are worthy of the second team for you?
So I think the SMGs is extremely straightforward, and I had
Okay.
the hardest time with the 2 ARs, but I also went with Draza and Ghosty. I kind of like, I looked at the overall KD numbers on Breaking Point. Shout out Breaking Point, and for the ARs, like Draza has a 1.03 KD overall, Ghosty has a 1.04. There really isn't anybody above them who
Mm-hmm.
like really stands out. Rancor is at a 1.05, Geo is at a 1.05, and Dashi is at a 1.04. So they're literally like
Yeah, right there.
within very close in terms of overall KD. The only one that jumps out is Super, who has a 1.09. But again, as we've talked about before, like, smaller sample size for him. I could see him getting some votes, especially if he is voted as Rookie of the Year. It would make sense if the Rookie of the Year got some All Star votes too. It didn't happen last year with Gwen, but I believe the year before it would have happened with Scrap, because that's when Scrap was Rookie of the Year, and I'm pretty sure he got second team All Star his first year. Um, so yeah, I could, in my mind, the SMGs, I guess, just jumping ahead a little bit, the SMGs, Joe Deceives and Neptune, I've been pretty vocal about this from, the midpoint of the season. I think Joe Deceives is 100% slam dunk, second team All Star, just the way he played this year. I think it's hard not to include him. He also is 8th overall KD with a 1.08 on the season, and that's tied with Simp. Um, and then Neptune, we've talked, plenty about Neptune over all these episodes. I do think because of the top 12 finish at the most recent tournament, it's very possible Neptune could fall out of this spot. But I think just given his massive impact that he had um, for Vancouver and completely altering the course of their season, I think he
Mm-hmm.
deserves some uh, recognition as an all-star. So I really the SMGs are pretty set in stone in my mind. The ARs, I lean Draza and Ghosty because, like I said, the stats aren't that drastic for anybody else, and then Draza and Ghosty have the championships this year to like kind of push them above the other guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I've initially wrote down Joe and Neptune um as my SMGs for second team. And then I erased it and then I just started putting down SMG players that I think not are going to make it by any means, but like could have some argument at some various point. So obviously Joe and Neptune would be on that list. Envoy, who I think has just been overshadowed by three incredible teammates. And has obviously been a part of two championships as well. Beezy in kind of the same category, although his stats do not hold up nearly as well as like Envoy is, for example. Real, because Miami has had two top three finishes on land, and he's been a part of them both, unlike Super, for example, who came into the season late. Kleenex is also, a great player. I just kind of put him down because he was, I should say, last year's second team All Stars were Dashi, Draza, Kleenex, and Shotzi. And obviously, we haven't really mentioned any Optic guys this season on this episode. And Dashi was one of the ARs that I put down for like honorable mention. Shotzi was one of the SMGs that I put down for honorable mention. Hook was also one of the players that I put down for honorable mention, even though I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. And then my last, just like one that I jotted down, was Snoopy, because he's the best player on Boston. But I think in general, I can't really reward what, like, for example, you said Geo just in terms of stats. Like, I couldn't reward a guy on Minnesota who finished ninth this season and didn't even make champs. It's kind of the same deal with Optic and Boston. They're seventh and eighth in the standings. Until this time around at Major 4, they had not really performed well on LAN at all. Even though Hook's stats are very good, I should say. Yeah. Like, Hook has some of the best stats in the league. I think individually he was very good this season, but when that doesn't translate into really any team success, other than a top 4 finish at the last major, he was dropped this season. He didn't play at the very beginning of the year, and then he didn't obviously play for a little bit after Pred came back. So like he's out. I would probably go Joe and Neptune like you. The only argument against Neptune would be that he did not play in the Major 1. He did not play in the Major 1 qualifiers, Minor 1, or Major 1 itself. Yeah. So he played 75% of this season, basically, where I guess the arguments could be mostly for like Envoy because he was on a championship team the whole year. Beezy, same thing. I don't know if you could really make an argument for Real or Kleenex, but those would probably be the closest contenders. But yeah, I'd probably go with Neptune and Joe on the SMGs.
So you said something, I know you didn't mean it like directly, like for Geo specifically. Mm-hmm. If Geo had a 1.25 KD,
and the Octane,
like leagues above, and the team doesn't make champs, I think that can give you grounds for getting some all-star votes, obviously, especially if the stats support it. I mean, there was
the attach thing a few years ago where he was
Pred and MW2, I think, had like a 1.22 KD.
Yeah,
because I think that was the first or second year I actually voted, and I was like the team's not that good, but Pred's numbers are, you just can't ignore them. So if that was the case here, I think that's a different conversation. But that's just, especially from an AR perspective, that's not how I view it. I think a lot of these guys outside of Scrap and Sellium are pretty close statistically. So the championships for the LAT and ATL guys push them over the edge. But the other aspect of it that I think, I even mentioned it last year when, ironically, we were kind of pushing for Ghosty to get that like the fourth and final AR spot. Um, the optic fan vote, I'm pretty sure like Shotzi was number 2 SMG. I don't remember. The CDL actually did a good job of posting after the fact,
The breakdown.
like the breakdown. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Shotzi was like far and away like one of the most popular in terms of the fan vote. Um, and I think that that could skew the second team. Um, if Dashy and Shotzi get a lot of the fan vote, I think that could push them, especially someone like Neptune, like you said, who wasn't competing at the first major cycle. I could see like Joe Deceives and Shotzi getting in there. I personally am not. I didn't vote for the Optic guys, and I wouldn't, especially given the they had the 3 top 8 placings earlier this year. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, I think I'm pretty confident with Scrap, Cell, Simp, and Hydra's first team, Draza, Ghosty, Joe, and Neptune as second team.
I I think I kind of hope that's the two teams. I don't know if it will be like you said. The fan
Yeah.
vote kind of plays into that. The coaches vote, which has been
Yep.
pretty different on a lot of cases than what the fans also think, or even what the players themselves think. So I'm a little not concerned, but I'm interested to see how this all shakes out. But yeah, I think that Neptune, his impact over the 75% of the season that he did play kind of outweighs what what he didn't get to experience, I guess, in the first part of the season. And we'll get there, I think, a little bit later with some of these awards, because I have like a probably a better take when we get to like Rookie of the Year, for example. But yeah, I think we both agree Scrap and Cell and Simp and Hydra as the first team, Ghosty and Draza, and Joe and Neptune for the second team. Did you have an honorable mention that you jotted down at all?
I think honorable mentions would probably just be like I mean not necessarily from me, but I think Dashi and Shotzi might get in there because of the optic, and I do think especially for the second team AR that Rancor or Super, depending on who's Rookie of the Year, if one of them gets Rookie of the Year and gets a lot of love from some of the other voting groups, I could see them taking one of the second team AR spots. Right now I'd say I'm very confident in 5.5 of the All-Stars. I think that first team, I would be absolutely stunned if that's not the exact first team.
Yeah,
And
same.
I think Joe Deceives is like a slam dunk for the second team SMG. And then the 0.5, I would say I think Draza or Ghosty is a guarantee for second team AR, but it's possible that both of them don't get it and only one of them does. I just don't know which one it would be. Um, so that's where my head's at right now with these All Star teams. I am interested. I think, um, hopefully the CDL does the breakdowns and stuff again, because it will be interesting to see like if I can't remember exactly how it went down last year, but I feel like there was like, especially maybe it was with Kleenex, because I was pretty vocal about wanting Kleenex to be an all-star last year. And I think it was interesting to see like the breakdown of like, the coaches valued Kleenex, if I remember correctly. But then like you had the fan vote where Shotzi was just, you know, basically very high up there because of the popularity and stuff. So it is interesting to see how this all balance out.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see how everybody votes. I don't know if they've said. I'm sure they haven't said that when it's going to be announced and when those teams are going to be released. But
It'll be a
um,
chance.
yeah. So let's move on. So All Stars done most improved / comeback player of the year. This is an Ego Chall exclusive because they don't do this in the CDL, but they probably should, to be honest, because this is a very interesting award. I think every year there is, you could debate what kind of comeback or to what extent it was, but coming into this season. Again, you can go back to episode 135. We listed off some of the examples going into the year. So we didn't know exactly what was going to happen, obviously, but we listed out some potential players to watch for this. The first and foremost, I think, or I guess the first two were Hook and Illy, because Hook was not in the league, but we had already heard that he was, one of the best players in challengers, if not the best player. And that just being a thing, I think was kind of on our radar, and we figured he would be back sooner rather than later. I don't know if we expected him to be back in the league after 2 matches, but that's kind of how it happened. He comes in, and he did have a good season when he played, but what a weird season to have in general. And the other one was Illy, and I went back and I watched the video, and you said that if Illy even gets into the CDL, then we have to rename the award to the Illy Award. Unfortunately, I don't know if that was like a Ego Chall curse, because he ends up retiring before the season is even over, and he does not get back into the CDL. So Illy does not get into the CDL. Hook does, but probably one of the weirder seasons that you could have at his stature. And then we also listed Arcides, Purge, Snoopy, Envoy, Paul X, Mac, and Hixie as potential candidates for most improved / comeback player of the year. Your official prediction was Vivid, who came back into the CDL with the Carolina Royal Ravens to start the season. My prediction was my boy Snoopy, who I went back and I watched it, and I said his PR was about the worst that you could possibly get last season. Did you have finalists for this? I wrote down a top 5 just in case.
Yeah, so did I. I think if we're only giving out one award for this, it becomes a lot harder. But I did, because we had most improved / comeback player, I did one for each, because I think there are 2 good candidates, and ironically it's 2 people we talked about for the All-Star team. I think most improved slam dunk has to be Joe Deceives, just based on what we saw this year. I mean, he got benched at one point early on last year, right? And it was really since the end of last year, those last couple events, he's just kicked it into another gear and carried that into this year. And especially if he's an all-star, I think he would be a really good pick for most improved if it was on its own. Comeback player, I think Neptune, you have to give it to him, just because like he comes back to the CDL after not being in the CDL and makes it to 2 grand finals. If we had to only do one pick, I would be really torn between the 2 of those, so I'm not going to say which one it would be. But another person that I wanted to shout out in particular for most improved would be Nasty. I just think, I guess coinciding with Neptune joining Vancouver, from that point on, I think Nasty he really like kicked it into another gear and really showed what he's capable of. So I wanted to at least shout him out. I also mentioned Estriel for potential most improved, because I think very highly of him, and I think he got better as the year progressed. As did I put down Purge and Xnid too. I think Xnid, obviously, it's not necessarily like most improved from one year to another, but over the course of this year, what he dealt with from a team standpoint and how he was able to continually consistently put up decent numbers given the environment and whatnot. I felt like that was a decent shot, or decent shout there. But yeah, I think most improved for me would be Joe Deceives. Comeback player of the year would be Neptune, if I could split those up.
Yeah, so I combined them, but yeah, I think you're right on. I actually listed 1 through 5. So 5, I said Slasher, because he got benched by Boston last year.
Yep.
I wasn't even sure if he would be in the CDL to start this season. And then, obviously the end of the year has been kind of a disaster for Carolina, but just looking at the season in totality, I think just him being back in the CDL, finishing the whole season with the team, being they were at one point like the 3rd, 4th, 5th best team in the league, and pretty consistently in that spot. So I gave him 5. I gave Hook 4 because he got back into the league. And I would say he it was like a comeback midseason as well, because he gets dropped for Pred. I thought pretty unfairly, but that's kind of here nor there. Then comes back, and I think he played really well this season. It just was a unusual optic year where they made multiple roster changes during the course of a season, and he didn't really get to stick around for an extended period of time until this past roster change where he comes back in for Pred. I had 3 Snoopy because my boy got back to champs after literally being like, I think it was the 3rd or 4th worst season in CDL history. People were saying that he needed to be in challengers, and he was the best player on a team that made champs. So I shout out my boy Snoopy. Like I'm gonna put him in the top 3, whether he really deserved it or not. And then my top 2 were the same as you. I had 2 for Joe Deceives. I thought just if you are to break it up though, like he is by far the most improved player just on what we saw last year and what we saw this year. But like even if you combine them, he's had an incredible year, and I did not expect him, and I did not expect him to make the impact that he has with Toronto. And I got to hold my hand up. I was completely wrong about that. And then number 1, of course, is Neptune. Like if you're just gonna do a comeback player of the year, he is who could like he might be the comeback player of the decade. You know, like I haven't seen this kind of thing happen probably ever, where a guy comes in mid-season, someone that we actually know about and has been in the CDL before, and he has the impact that Neptune has had with Vancouver, even though the end of the season was not ideal. Like if you're just looking at it from a complete, since he came in from Major 2, they made it to back-to-back major grand finals. They made it to the minor grand finals. They were in the top 3 in both of our opinions for the best teams in the game at one point, and they still, to me, are championship contenders going into this event. So I would definitely give him this award, regardless if it was combined or split up into most improved comeback.
And because I split it up for comeback player, I also mentioned Slasher, similar to I was thinking along the lines of you. Bench last year, comes back, but I wouldn't be able to actually give him the award because of the sort of downturn at the end of the year for Carolina. I even mentioned Kenny's name. Just it's kind of weird to do a comeback player for a guy who won champs last year, but just because of how tough that beginning of the year was to what he was able to do, like I figured an honorable mention for him in terms of voting for comeback play of the year would be it'd be whatever. And then I put down Fellow too. Obviously didn't have great results with LAG, but really just a nod to Fellow getting back into the league. And I guess you could do like Arcides too, for that. Didn't get the results, but they were able to play well enough in challengers to, at least warrant them getting another opportunity in the CDL.
Yeah, for sure. I don't really know if there's anybody else that we're leaving out. Like maybe you could say TJ for most improved or something, but I think he's been pretty consistent, just all around. Did it drop or something? Can you hear me?
You there?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I think we lost Bink.
Looks like the stream is still live. Can you hear me?
Yeah. One moment while
I see you talking in the Twitch stream, but I don't hear you in Discord.
Okay.
Now I hear you.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I didn't change anything, so.
I thought I lost internet, but I didn't. So I don't know what happened.
All right. I'll make sure to take it out when we post it.
I think it was at the end of that section anyway, so I think it'll be fine.
All right. We'll move on to okay. Next up, let's talk about Rookie of the Year. This is an award that the CDL will give out. We did not have very many candidates this season, something that we talked about on episode 135. The examples that we had to start this season were the entire Vegas Falcons roster, Roxas, Exnid, King Abadi, and Kix, as well as the 2 players on the Miami Heretics, Super and Rancor. At that time, we weren't entirely sure of who was actually going to start for Miami because they had the 5-man roster. So Super started on the bench. Rincourt ends up starting on the lineup, the starting lineup. And then we also gave another option. I said you could pick one of these 6, or you could pick someone not in the CDL. It didn't need to technically be anyone specific, but it was mostly these 6 versus the field. Mr. Binkowski over here chose the field, said someone not in the CDL right now. Although I did go back and I watched it.
Yep.
You gave a special shout out to King of Bodie, and it didn't work out because he had the worst KD in the entire CDL when he did play, and he got replaced during the season. I picked Rincourt, but I specially shouted out Rex because I figured that he might get a shot. I would say that was also not a great pick, even though he is still on a roster. He is going to champs, but certainly has not worked out in Carolina or his favor so far. My top 5 for this, for Rookie of the Year. So I think it's a really tough award because I would say most of these players, or I guess none of these players were on a championship team, right? Because there were only 4 championships at the majors, and FaZe and LAT won all of them. No rookies on either of those teams. And then in a few of these, cases, their teams were just really, really bad as well. And it's really hard to kind of see how valuable or how good they are when the rest of the team is so bad. But I went number 5, Lunars, who came into LAG after, I believe, Major 1. He finished the season on LAG. We talked about it. One of the worst CDL teams of all time. His rookie season just immediately went down the drain. It felt like there was a lot of hype for him, and it just did not pan out in the way that we thought it would, or anyone thought it would, I'm sure. But I'll give him a shout out at 5. 4, I went with Exnid because he was on Vegas the entire season. I think he performed pretty well, all things considered, with how bad that team was. Lunars, I think, had about as many wins as Exnid did, which, so they're kind of tied in that respect. And then I gave the edge to Exnid because he'd been on the team a little bit longer, and I think his stats might have been a little bit better, but I don't think it was like a huge difference either way. 3, I think, could be controversial because he has not played very much. But 3, I went with Mercules because so Exnid and Lunars were on teams way longer than him, and he had way more success in basically 5 weeks than anybody or than Exnid and Lunars did in 5 months, basically. So Mercules goes and gets, I believe, top 3 at Major 3 with Toronto, gets top 4 at Major 4 with Optic. He wins 2 qualifying matches, so he almost matches Exnid's entire season total in 3 weeks in the qualifiers. So I went with Mercules at 3. I could not move him any higher than that, though, because he was only around for so little time. And then my top 2, the Miami Heretics boys, I went with Rincourt for number 1 and Super for number 2. I've told you, and I've explained this on the podcast, why I would probably do this in general. Super came in before the Major 3 qualifiers, if I'm not mistaken. He substituted for 1 match for medals, I believe, during the Major 2 qualifiers, and then he came in full-time before Major 3, and he's been the best rookie this season, like over a long stretch of time. Mercules is probably like the highest ceiling at this moment, but it's also been 4 to 5 weeks. Super's been doing this for a few months now, and he deserves a lot of credit. He's been incredible. Had he played the whole season or close to it, I would have definitely given him Rookie of the Year. But Rincourt has been there since day 1 of this season. He has a top 3 finish, an extra top 3 finish at a major that Super does not, which is probably the big determining factor, because after that, it did not seem to work out for Miami in the qualifiers. So I'll go with Rincourt and Super for 1 and 2. How does your top 5 or your finalists match up with mine?
Basically, bar for bar, I put Rex/Lunars at 5 because I really just was like, you wanted a top 5, and I was like, I'll just do that. I had Exnid at 4. I had Mercules at 3, and I thought that was kind of high. I was gonna like switch Exnid and Mercules just because Exnid has played the whole season, but I think end of the day, the impact Mercules had, even in a small sample size with both Optic and Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
I gave him the edge there. And then, well, like you, I put Super at 2 and Rancor at 1. I think I said it in a couple of the past episodes. If Miami had won either of these events at Major 3, Major 4, and Super was the MVP of the event, I think that would have been the only way I could vote Super over Rancor,
Yeah.
just given the fact that Rancor played the whole season and Super didn't. But if Super ends up getting Rookie of the Year and people value the short term impact he had, I wouldn't be upset with it. I think, end of the day, like the Miami boys, like I think if we're of the opinion right now that it's either one of them, I think they'd probably be happy for one another if one of them gets it, and I think that's the most likely outcome. I think Rancor will get it in the end just because, like you said, he's got that extra top 3 placing, and he has he's been in the lineup for the full season, and I think that was this is a couple years now, especially last year, the whole debate at the end of the year was like Gwyn versus Abuza, and neither of them had the championships, but they were at least a part of the CDL for the whole season. And Abuza had that stretch at the beginning of the year when they were trying to make him use an SMG, and he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like a main AR. And then they eventually made roster changes to get him on the main AR, and that's when he started to shine. Um, so it's a little different in that sense this year, where it's really not like there aren't two contenders who don't have championships but played the whole season. It's really two players on the same team, and one played the whole season and one came in and drastically changed the season, but at the end of the day they didn't get a championship. So if people want to vote Super number 1, I wouldn't be against it, but in my mind I think Rancor's got to get it.
That's my thing right now is I don't know if people will actually agree with us because there's been so much talk about Super and like his impact on this team very obviously and rightfully so. And that makes me think that Super might be able to climb up the rankings and get enough votes. I don't know if it'll be in a unanimous or like an overwhelming decision in favor of Super, but I do think that it's probably going to be a lot closer than I would have it because like it wasn't that big or that hard of a decision for me to put Ringcore over Super in this, just because of the times that they played. Like one played a little more than half the season because if you're including both of the minors versus Super who played a little less than half the season, like that makes a big difference for me. I also think Mercules won't be nearly as high. Like I think
Yeah.
fan voting, if that is like fan voting, I think is in Rookie of the Year. If not, then it might just be the coaches and media. But if fan voting is in, Mercules will be a lot higher than probably he normally would be. But I think Exnid might finish third in the voting in general, just because he's been there. I think people felt very good for him that they actually won a match. They won a few matches. It seemed to be like almost a rallying cry for Exnid in particular. So I wonder if that'll affect anything in terms of voting for Rookie of the Year. Next up, season MVP. This obviously is probably the most important award, just in general. If you're looking at legacies, this has been a very, very good award for Atlanta FaZe in particular. So, past season MVPs, the first CDL MVP was Shotzi in 2020. Simp won in 21, Celium won in 22, Hydra in 23, and then Simp became the first two-time winner last season and won it in 2024. Before this season, you picked Scrap as your season MVP. I predicted Celium as my season MVP. Funnily enough, I believe for both of us, they probably will be the top two MVP candidates as well. however you break it down, they're going to be 1 and 2. I think in terms of our picks and just in general with how the MVP voting works when it is eventually released. Did you make a top 5? If so, start at the back and work your way to the front.
Okay, so I did this last year, I believe, too, where my 5th spot was sort of basically like that this person isn't gonna win MVP, but they deserve, some credit. And I believe last year I did Kleenex as my 5th candidate, and then the rest of it, the 4 through 1, was the first team All Stars. So on a similar note, this year I've got Neptune at 5. Don't think Neptune is the actual MVP. We've had this conversation on a couple of podcasts now, just the impact he had turning Vancouver's season around. He gets, I don't think he wins the award, but if he gets like 5th place MVP votes, it's kind of like, just like a special nod. I guess it's not gonna move the needle much, and I don't think realistically anyone could be the actual MVP outside of the 4 people above him. So like the 5th spot is kind of just like whatever in my mind, but
Yeah,
I feel
same.
like Neptune did enough to, at least get a nod and a vote in my mind. And then really, like you said, I mean, 4 and 3 could be interchangeable, but I have Hydra at 4 and Simp at 3. I think Hydra, kind of broke it down on the All-Star team there. Hydra deserves to be an All-Star, is an absolute freak and really good player, but doesn't have an individual MVP for a major this year. So my 3 candidates above him have MVPs at the majors. I think that only makes sense because if they were MVPs of individual tournaments, they deserve that sort of same recognition for the season overall. So narrowly edging out Hydra at 4, I put Simp at 3, 2 titles with FaZe, and 1 tournament MVP. I put Cell at 2, 2 titles with FaZe, 1 individual MVP, and then Scrap, overall season MVP with 2 titles and 2 tournament MVPs. I broke it down that way over a couple episodes now, even when we weren't like directly talking about it, but just because, same number of titles as the FaZe guys, but he has the individual MVP over Simp and Celium, 1 additional, I should say. That's where I'm leaning with Scrap. And I mean, if you look at the KDs too, it's Celium's up there with a 1.17 on the season, and Scrap's right behind him at a 1.14. Hydra actually with a 1.13 right behind Scrap. So, like 3-4. Simp has a 1.08. If you wanted to switch Hydra and Simp, I wouldn't, think much of it, but I really think it's a 2-horse race in my mind, especially given the individual accolades, the team success, and the KDs. Scrap and Cell are so close in all these regards, but I give the nod to Scrap.
So I had the same exact 5 as you, except I did flip Simp and Hydra. I had Hydra at 3, Simp at 4. Now that I heard you talk about it, I probably would flip them back and have the same exact 5 as you. Because I really wasn't considering that Simp had the tournament MVP and Hydra did not, and I think those. I just think historically you're going to look back on these awards and like your selections, and I think it's a lot easier to explain why Simp would be over Hydra. Like, not that it will actually matter because neither of them are going to win MVP, but like if Celium and Scrap, like they have this difference, right? There is not much difference in their stats, and there's not much different in the accolades other than Scrap has 1 additional tournament MVP. And I think that will end up mattering, especially when Hydra is also on your team. Like, that also tells me that you were able, at least for those 2 events, to be better than what I would consider. I think he was the 3rd best player, Hydra, but I think in terms of the most valuable, or I guess the most outstanding like season, then probably Simp gets it because of the award. But like the fact that Scrap still beat Hydra in those two events to get tournament MVP, that probably does matter. And that's why Scrap is number one. I would probably flip and put Simp at 3, Hydra at 4. And yeah, I did have Neptune at 5 as well. I just don't. I was trying to think of people to put in that spot otherwise. So I referred back to the all-star teams and just, okay, like, do I put Ghosty? Do I put Draza? What about Joe? Is there a case for someone like Ray Al? Is there a case for Rincour or Super? And at the end of the day, I couldn't get myself to that. I think Neptune just has such a great case because you saw the before and you saw the after. You saw the value that he actually brings to a team. And regardless of if he played the entire season or not, he played enough of the season, and he did so much in that part of the season, more so than Joe Deceives, who has not had the heights that Neptune has had, frankly, like this season, despite playing a little bit longer of the year than Neptune. Envoy, I just couldn't put Envoy or Ghosty. I just couldn't say that all three, three of the LHT guys should be in the top 5. Same with Draza or Abizi. And then I just didn't think that Rincour, Super definitely didn't play enough. But like, if Super had been able to play this whole season, and who knows what happens at maybe like Major 1, for example, where they get top 3, could Miami have gotten into the grand finals? Then it starts to become a conversation. But obviously that didn't happen. So yeah, Neptune's at 5 for me, which is just an incredible story by itself. For him to, I think he'll get some MVP votes. I don't think it'll be any first or second place votes, but I definitely think he'll be on a lot of people's ballots. Next up was actually not an award, but it was more just predictions we were making. And this was just kind of a whole section. So the first was first roster change. And we've done this for a few seasons now just to, I mean, you never know. Like, these are the most unpredictable things in the entire world. And this just proved it this season. So you came into the season, you said Miami, because they had the 5-man roster.
Yep.
There was always the possibility that Super, like last season, Miami did this where they made an early roster change. I believe Eric Boom either came in or came out. I can't remember exactly.
Came in for Journey.
Yeah, so they did that pretty earlier in the year, and then obviously that probably would have been we thought that could have been the case. I ended up going with Toronto. I was zagging, I think, just to be a little bit different, because I did believe that Miami could be the first team, but I also did not believe that Toronto would be as good as they have been this year. They did not make a roster change. I'm not considering Mercules filling in for Beans at all. So they did not make a roster change at all. So credit to them. They're, the 4th or 5th best team in the league this entire season. In reality, the team that did make the first roster change they would literally have been the last pick. It was Optic. 6 days. I checked 6 days after. I guess it was a full week after we did that podcast. They made a roster change. They replaced Pred with Hook, which nobody could have expected. It did not work out because even though they did have immediate success with Hook, then after Major 1, when they have a disappointing result, they bring Pred back in for Hook, and then that kind of just continues where Optic has one of the worst seasons I can remember of a championship hopeful in a really, really long time. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but I just was kind of baffled that was the first roster change. I'd almost forgotten because it's been so long ago.
I hadn't forgotten, but if either of us had predicted Optic, the team that had just won champs, to make the first roster change of the season, and we were actually right, there would have been some pretty serious accusations of like time traveling or like something going on that was like, how the hell did you guys get this? So there was no universe where we were ever getting this right, but I think that's fun. I mean, there's some other ones coming up here that we'll rattle off for just predictions and whatnot. It's pretty funny to look back. Even like my King of Body special shout out for Rookie of the Year. Like, it's fun to look back on these and see what actually happened.
Yeah, this one was probably the easiest to predict. The Paris Legion Memorial Award winner. This is the last place team at the end of the CDL regular season. In past years, 2024, the Boston Breach, 2023, the London Royal Ravens, 2022, the namesake, the Paris Legion, who went 2-23 in the 22 season, LAG and Paris in 2021, and Seattle and LAG in 2020. We both picked the Las Vegas Falcons. How could we have predicted that? That was incredible. 3-28 at the very bottom of the CDL. Congratulations to the Vegas Falcons. I don't know if we could have picked anybody else for this award because we literally, I mean, Boston, I think I mentioned Boston could be bad, and I'm so glad that didn't work out.
And Boston literally won their first match of the year if you did pick it against Optic, the defending world champ. So that would have been funny.
And then the next two, we still have to see. We have not seen how this will play out, but we predicted champs winner and champs MVP. So obviously we're just including CDL champs, 2020, the Dallas Empire, 21, Atlanta FaZe, 22, LA Thieves, 23, New York Subliners, and 24, Optic Texas. Your prediction was Atlanta FaZe. My prediction was LA Thieves. We have not agreed one time on who will win an event this season as we go into that event. I think I picked LAT twice, maybe. I think you picked Atlanta twice. We have not been able to match up, and I have not been able to get one single thing right in terms of the winner. I think it is pretty fitting that we, again, have different picks here, and it is Atlanta and LAT. Watch it be somebody else to win champs, and then we're completely wrong again. Do you want to stick with your prediction of Atlanta, or would you like to switch to LAT?
I mean, unless you switch, I'll stick to make sure that we have our bases covered. But, gun to my head right now, I have to pick one team to win champs this year. It's LA Thieves.
Yeah, I'll stick with my prediction, and that will probably backfire on me pretty soon. Champs MVP, as a result, you picked Atlanta, I picked LAT. That's usually you just pick one of the players from those teams. Yeah. So fittingly, you picked Celium, I picked Scrap. Again, the two MVP candidates, the top two MVP candidates. Yeah. But that has not always worked out, so I should mention champs MVPs in the past. 2020, Crimsix, who was by far not like Shotzi won the season MVP that year on the team and did not win champs MVP. The same thing happened in 21. Simp won season MVP. Abizi won champs MVP. I remember we talked about that a lot, whether who should win season MVP for that. In 22, Kenny of LAT won champs MVP. 23, Kismet won champs MVP. I believe Hydra had won season MVP that year. And then last year, Shotzi, I mean, just the run that they went on after being about as down as you could possibly be coming into champs. Optic Texas win. Shotzi tells Aches to go F himself, I guess, because that was the ultimate FU. I think we'll probably have something a little more predictable this time around, but who knows? That's usually not how things go for us.
I think we give each other a little pat on the back here, especially given the fact that we were doing these predictions before we even really knew the meta or anything.
Yeah.
It would have been pretty easy if it was I mean, I still think the SMG is really good in this game, but it would have been, very possible we both pick ARs for season MVP and champs MVP, and then it becomes a 4 SMG meta and we look like idiots. So shout out us a couple months ago, us for being pretty spot on here with the picks. I do think it's kind of funny though that we had for season MVP I picked Scrap, then champs MVP obviously because of the winner I got Celium, and you had the direct opposite or just reverse of that, but still shout out us.
Yeah, shout out us. Most pleasant surprise of the year. We did not do, so I have a few categories here. We did not do this at the beginning of the season. Obviously, some of these you can't do at the beginning of the season, but these first two we definitely could have if I had thought about it. Most pleasant surprise of the year. So I had a few jotted down. I haven't really come to a consensus on what it will be.
Damn.
Did you have a consensus on what you wanted?
No, so I was gonna say you go first, and then I'll go back off.
So I had a few. I'll just list, or I'll just say what I had jotted down. So the first and probably like the easiest pick would be Neptune slash Vancouver's resurgence. Just the fact that he came back into the CDL and has had as much success as he had, and that he to both of us, he's an MVP candidate, or at least should be on the ballot for a lot of people. Should be a second team all-star player. That's kind of like a huge, like, that's just a feel-good story that someone could fight back into the CDL and have as much success as Neptune has had. Mine, you knew I was going to say something like this. The Boston Breach and Snoopy, from literally the worst team in the league last year to making champs this season. It was not always pretty, but they were very competitive for most of this season. They beat LA Thieves, who could turn out to be the champs winners at a major, and send them into the losers bracket. They've had some really cool moments. They beat the defending world champion Optic Texas in the first match of this CDL season, and who knows, they might have been able to break up the Pred Optic roster with that one win, because who knows if Optic goes 2-0 that 1 week, if they're able to work out whatever differences there were. This is a smaller thing, but Mercules just being in the CDL, him making an impact as much as he has. The Carolina pre-roster change, they literally pre-roster change. Anything after that, I'm not considering. But Carolina, when they were as high as like third in the CDL, that was very pleasantly surprising. Yeah. Joe Deceives, another one, just having a great season. And the last one I had was Miami / Super, having as much success as they've had.
Yeah. So I didn't do individuals. I was thinking it was a team-based award here.
Yeah,
so I
that's
guess
fine.
But I had Vancouver or Miami as my pick, and then in parentheses I did a early season Carolina as an honorable mention. So if you pick either Vancouver or Miami, I would go with the other. If you pick Boston, just because you're a Boston boy, I think I would have to go with Vancouver, just because I really think that whole, I mean, they literally, they had Hicksy on the team, who statistically was, one of the worst KDs in respawns. Obviously, he's a good S&D player. Not going to take that away from him. But just the massive difference from the start of the season once Neptune came in, and we mentioned it even earlier, or I mentioned it, like the impact Neptune had not only on, the team overall, but even like going to individuals. Like I really think Abuza and Nasty stepped up to another level once Neptune joined the team. So I love what Miami has done, especially since Super came into the team, and I'll always value that S&D play. But I'll just lock in most pleasant surprise of the year for me is Vancouver after Neptune joins the team. Miami, and like you, pre-roster change / very, very early season Carolina as my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I was actually going to lean toward Miami, so I'll go with them. Cool. I'll lock that in. Miami and Super coming in and being as impactful as pretty much any player in the league over the last 2 months has just been incredible. The fact that they have what we consider to be the 2 top rookies this season, at least in terms of voting. I think if you just looked at it, Mercules is probably like the most promising and most hyped rookie, but in terms of voting, they're probably going to be the top 2 rookies, and that's just setting themselves up for a lot of success in the future, hopefully, because Real was somebody who we considered for Rookie of the Year last season. Now they have 2 great rookies this season in Super and Rancor. Who knows? Like, they're able to win. I said it on the last time, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago now, but I think they're the only team to beat Atlanta and LAT on land this year. So who knows? Sky's the limit, seems like, for Miami. Biggest disappointment of the year. Not to be a downer or anything, but I jotted down a few things. C9 New York is one of them for sure. I think we both had, I not like championship, like, I don't think they were going to be a top 2, top 3 team, but definitely thought they would be at champs, and they finished 10th this year. They were not very competitive in a lot of events. I think the highest placing they had was top 6, even on land. So not great for C9. LAG, I thought they had much, much more potential. Thought they would at least be competing for a champ spot, and in turn they win 5 games or 5 matches, I believe, this year. So just a horrible season for LAG. Optic, the defending world champions, barely making champs, or I guess not barely because they had a really good Major 4, but like the fact that they went into Major 4 and it was kind of up in the air whether they would make it or not was horrible. All of the roster changes that they made this season, definitely the most directionless that Optic has seemed in a really long time. And then Carolina post roster change would also be my biggest, one of the biggest disappointments. I don't believe that they finished above top 12 at any major with Rex. Granted, he had like 1 week's practice going into Major 3, but then they just didn't really do anything in the Major 4 qualifiers. They finished top 12, if I'm not mistaken, at Major 4 as well. And they have little to no momentum going into champs, which was very surprising considering where they were earlier in the season. So I also had Black Ops 6, which was like this game. You've said you haven't really played at all this year. The complaints have been copious among the players, especially with the patch stuff that's been coming out over the last month or so. I will pick Optic though, just because I mean they're the defending world champions. I expected them to be in the top 3 at minimum, and they finished 7th at the end of this regular season.
Yeah, I had down Optic and Cloud9, so along the same lines as you, I think the post roster change Carolina, that's a good shout too. And I just thought of this when you said Black Ops 6. I would definitely, if I picked a non-team to win this Ego Chall award, the biggest disappointment would hands down be the Black Ops 6 maps / like the decisions around the map pool, because literally we've talked about it over these episodes that I think if you ask most people, the most popular map this year now across the modes competitively is Hacienda. It's not even a Black Ops 6 map.
Nope.
And this whole thing with them adding Fringe after it could realistically be added for competitive viability. So yeah, that's a slam dunk for me. Shout out you for getting me to think about that by just saying Black Ops 6 there. But if we had to go back to a team and you pick Optic, I wouldn't have a problem picking Optic. But realistically, kind of like you outlined, this like sort of, I don't know how to properly phrase it, but just they have the 3 back-to-back-to-back top 8 finishes. I think that would be, if the season ended after that, you give them biggest disappointment. I'm okay with it. But this, it's I don't think resurgence is really the best word, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. Just like what they've been able to do since Mercules and the recency bias around how they performed at this last major would kind of like push me a little bit away from picking them over Cloud9 when just looking at Cloud9 season in totality. But I do agree, it's a very slim margin there just because like Optics coming off of winning champs. They did have some outside factors with the Pred situation and everything around that working against them. But having back-to-back-to-back top 8 finishes, that definitely sticks out. I just think like you, for me, I would go with Cloud9 because I didn't have them as, we did the top. We said it was like a 3. We had the top 4 last year, and we kind of cut that down to top 3 heading into this season, which we did think Optic was a part of. So it would make sense to have them as most disappointing. But like right after that, I was thinking Cloud9 was going to be one of those teams in like that 5 to 6 or 7 range.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they didn't get there, and they didn't make champs. Optic did. So I'm leaning Cloud9, but I think Optic / Cloud9 for a team. Biggest disappointing team of the year. Special honorable mention to the Black Ops 6 maps and map decisions for biggest disappointment of the CDL season in totality.
On a more positive note, favorite moment of the year. Things that I wrote down: Vegas beating Optic for their first win. Just an incredible turn of events for Pred to beat Optic and kind of lift Exnid and the rest of the Falcons out of the mud, at least temporarily. Miami versus LAT on stage, going chest to chest. Always fun. Mercules' run with the Toronto Ultra at Major 3. Hex scooting off screen after losing to LAG. Scooting literally through every single webcam and every single little cut was awesome. A killer tweet that I had not seen until this weekend from February 2028, or February 28, not 2028. He's not in the future. Quote, "The real reason I left gaming is when I realized that it was linked to the CIA, all the propaganda that Call of Duty pushes. I had to protect my family." And then he followed up, "Will delete later." So I think that has to be in there. Another tweet from Nadeshot this time. This was after the Minor 1. I believe it was after Minor 1 where they lost, or it could have been, I think it was almost after Minor 1 because that was the first matches after the long break for the holidays. Nadeshot tweeted, "I don't want to see our guys log off the game until the first major. Clearly the foot was taken off the gas pedal over the break. Figure it out." I love that tweet. By love, I mean I hated that tweet. And then I had two clips. Neptune trash talking during Major 3.
Oh my god.
And Scump and Imbo's reaction to it. Don't you ever...
Okay.
Imbo's in particular really cracked me up, him pointing across the screen. Yeah. And then the last one, I don't know if you saw this, was Scump lecturing Nadeshot about vaping and him reenacting what the vape was kind of talking to Nadeshot, and he said, "Suck me, Nadeshot, suck me." I thought that was a good clip to include in this as well. But yeah, those were my candidates, if you will, for favorite moment of the year. My winner, though, is Hex scooting off screen after losing to LAG.
All right. So you went a little bit of a different direction for me. I will say, after you picked those candidates, if I had to pick like a funniest moment of the year, I would go with the Neptune trash talk. That killed me, and especially the Embos and the watch party reaction to it too. That was incredible. So funniest moment of the year, if we do like a separate thing, that's 100%. I would go with that. Favorite moment of the year, I did like you mentioning Mercules' run. That's just, I mean, it's very possible we never see anything like that again. But I wrote down the scrap versus super thing, LAT versus Miami at Major 4 as an honorable mention. And then my favorite moment of the year was Major 1. I guess from a gameplay perspective, gameplay-wise, my favorite moment was just the battle between LA Thieves and Atlanta FaZe at Major 1, combining the winners finals and the grand finals, where we saw a reverse sweep in the winners finals, followed up by a 7-map grand finals that came down to a game 5 round 11. Very tough for like a combination like that. It's literally the maximum number of maps and realistically almost the maximum number of rounds you could see between a winners finals and a grand finals combined. So, on a more serious note, like gameplay, strictly gameplay wise, that's what I would say. That combination for Major 1 of LA Thieves versus Atlanta FaZe. But definitely the Neptune trash talk. I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot about that, honestly, and that killed me.
Yeah, I actually did write down Major 1 grand finals as well and forgot to say it. It was at the top of my list. So yeah, that any of those moments, hopefully we'll get a few more at Champs or maybe over the next few weeks because some of these were tweets and live stream clips. So we'll see what happens. And then the final category of our show, biggest what if of the year. I love hypotheticals, both in traditional sports and esports. I think about it all the time. Like, what if the Cleveland Cavaliers had been able to trade for Amari Stoudemire in 2009? Does LeBron leave in 2010? Do the New York Knicks, if they didn't play that stupid Sopranos video for LeBron, do they end up signing LeBron and the big three, and they go to the Knicks. A lot of it has to do with LeBron James, of course. Biggest what if I listed, I think, at 5 down. So one was something actually we talked about a few weeks ago. What if Toronto signs Mercules after Major 3 and he doesn't end up going to Optic? There was also the scenario that he signed with C9 New York, which was a rumor after Major 3 as well, before he ended up signing with Optic. Another was C9 centric. What if they don't play from LA this year? What if they played from Dallas or even Atlanta or something like that? What if Vancouver, instead of signing Neptune, signed Hook or Afro, like we were talking about back before Major 2? The other one was Neptune. What if he joined another team? At the time, he could have theoretically joined LAG, which would have been very interesting to see how that would have went. And another was Optic. Optic made a change and actually brought in Hook around that time as well. So what if Neptune had joined Optic? That is a very, very interesting what if. Another Optic one.
Sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No. What were you going to say?
At that time, it was Pred coming back in for Hook because Neptune joined after Major 1.
Yeah, right. And then the last two were Optic centric as well. Optic, what if they don't go back to Pred after Major 1? What if they just keep Hook in the lineup? And then the first one is, what if Pred doesn't get taken off Optic in the first place? Or what if he doesn't get taken off Optic after Major 2 or whatever it was, where they brought back Hook and brought in Skies? So a lot of Optic stuff. I don't know of those, or if you had any others about the biggest what if of the season.
No, yeah, that's so. I wrote down. I think it has to be, but it's even a little bit before that. Is just what if Pred's initial situation didn't happen, and because from everything we know, that was affecting the first week of matches. Because as we outlined, they made the first roster change by bringing Hook in for Pred. Pred, steps away, goes back home to Australia, I believe, and all that. So my thing, that's the champs winning roster. So just in my head, what if that doesn't happen at all? The dynasty, or not dynasty, can't call it a dynasty. The champs winning roster from 2024 sticks on Optic, because that trickles down to where does Hook go? How does that 2024 champs team play overall? That's really, I think that's a no-brainer pick for biggest what if. But one I just thought about when you mentioned LAG, there were those rumors during the negotiations in the offseason between LAT and stuff that Gentlemates was trying to swoop in and get either the duo of Hydra and Scrap, or Hydra, Scrap, and Envoy, and then plus somebody else. So another big what if, I guess, is just what if the LAT super team doesn't sign with Thieves and goes to Gentlemates / LAG instead. Obviously, Gentlemates had a as you outlined, a pretty rough season this year, but it could literally what does, I think, this is all hypothetical at this point, but if LAT missed out on getting Scrap, Envoy, and Hydra, I feel like Ghosty would have stayed with LAT. So it would be a very big question of who would, maybe Linz is the fourth guy on that Gentlemate squad. Linz, Hydra. No, that doesn't make sense. It would have to be another AR. Maybe Envoy plays an AR. I don't know. But then what does LAT's roster look like? And does is that a case of Gentlemates is winning these championships and LAT isn't it champs? That's a pretty big what if that I just thought of.
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs if we include the roster change period, because everybody but Optic and Atlanta, I believe, changed, right? And Boston also did not change.
Boston after EWC, yeah.
Yeah. So, if we include the roster changes, there's a lot. If Hydra just was no, I'm cool in New York. I don't care about going to LAT. That's a huge one, and that changes pretty much the entire complexion of the league. Or if Hydra was actually, I want to go to Atlanta, and it probably would have been a BZ to get knocked out. There's a lot of what ifs in those kinds of scenarios. But it's going to be very interesting. We're obviously getting close to champs, and kind of all those what ifs go out the window because, like, I've said it before, and we'll cover this more in depth on an episode over the next few weeks. But like legacies are made and broken at champs. You could have as many titles as you want, but if you don't have the rings that go along with it, then kind of all that talk is pointless. We've seen that most of the time. Like, for example, like the reason that Karma was seen as the GOAT kind of undisputably, like for a long time, was he was the only player with 3 rings. But as soon as Crimsix gets his 3rd ring, as soon as Clayster gets his 3rd ring, then that conversation becomes a lot more interesting. Now there is more debate, or I guess more legitimate debate for the greatest of all time. But we will eventually talk about the legacies and kind of talk about that in the context of champs coming up over the next few weeks. I believe we are a little less than 3 weeks away from the 2025 CDL Championship, and we'll be back I believe we'll be back in half a week, maybe a week from now, to discuss where we think teams are going into the final event of the year. It's been a while since we did our power rankings / tier lists. I don't think we've done one since like Major 2, maybe.
I was gonna say it's either after Major 2 or during Major 2. Even I don't think we did one maybe we did one Major 3 qualifiers, but that would absolutely be like the last time.
Yeah, so it's been several months since then. A lot has changed since we last did them, but we will do them on the next episode of the Ego Chall Podcast. We appreciate you sticking around. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Please like, subscribe, or follow the podcast feed wherever you're listening or watching on. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've had daily videos there for the last week and a half, and continue to hope to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. So please subscribe there. We're, I believe, at 234 subscribers on YouTube. You can also watch the live stream on YouTube or twitch.tv/Ego Chall Podcast. You can follow Bink on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/jbink with 2Ks. Follow us on Twitter at jbink with 2Ks, at Pres Byers, and the podcast Twitters at Ego Chall Podcast. And yeah, we'll be back over the next week or so to talk about power rankings and tier lists. And then we will officially shift into champs talk more specifically moving forward. We're getting close. It feels like it's been a really long time since we got some Call of Duty matches. It feels like it's going to be a long time until we get more Call of Duty matches, but it'll be here before we know it. And then we'll have a lot of fun previewing champs. That does it for me. Bink, take it away.
Yep. Thank you guys as always for all the support. Appreciate it. Really had a good time yapping today, basically. Had some fun thinking about the season, but like Preston said, it's not over yet, and we still got the big one coming up in the EWC after Champs 2. So, it's not all done and dusted, but it was a fun time to talk about and look back on the season, the regular season as a whole so far. So I enjoyed it. Hope you guys did as well. Shout out Preston too. Been putting in a lot of work with those daily videos and even the notes for the last couple episodes. He's been going above and beyond. So shout out Preston. Make sure you guys show him some love. We'll be back at some point soon whenever we got time to go live again, and hopefully we'll start to, as we get closer to champs, have more to talk about in that front, and maybe some stuff will go down the timeline to give us some more recent stuff to talk about too. So it should be fun. Clock is ticking though. Champs is quickly coming up, and we'll be here to break it all down and preview it and all that good stuff. So hope you guys enjoy. See you guys whenever we go live again, and remember to